How's it going, y'all?
And welcome back to B Bros after a long time.
We are returning to talk about the greatest cinematic event of the year, Spider-Man No Way Home. Specifically about how the future for Peter Parker will be and what are the new projects and topics are on the horizon for us.
Be aware, there will be major spoilers in this video.
We believe we've watched the best Spider-Man movie so far due to many different reasons. After Far From Home, there was a story of Peter Parker that got complicated real fast, and it had to resolve in a compelling way that would also connect that story to the multiverses and Doctor Strange.
We were a bit worried that our Peter's story was going to cut short and it would rush into the multiverses, but it turned out we had nothing to be worried about. The reason why multiverses intervened connected perfectly with Mysterio revealing Peter's identity to the world. Also, the idea of people knowing Spider-Man was Peter Parker showing up is a clever in-universe way of bringing up the old villains of different Spider-Man. This made the movie a great story and a great fan service just like Endgame.
Speaking of fan service, continuing the unfinished stories of Andrew Garfield's and Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man whilst helping our Spider-Man was incredible. Seeing the three swinging and working together to defeat their greatest challenges were mind-blowing.
It would have been unimaginable 5 years ago.
Also, the other Spider-Man didn't steal the thunder from our Peter, which was the most concerning thing before this movie for us.
The ending of the movie for us is by far the greatest part of the movie. During the start, Peter was living a perfectly good life with a few tragedies but wasn't fully under the burden of being a superhero.
His great power wasn't coming with great responsibility.
He was living two different lives just like Doctor Strange mentioned, and he hadn't embraced Spider-Man. However, with the events of No Way Home, he fully started his superhero journey that we know from the comics, the animated series, and the other movies. He now lives in Manhattan close to crime, has his own apartment, and prioritizes Spider-Man over Peter. He sacrificed his life for everyone else's.
The ending scene reminded us a lot about the Spider-Man PS4, which we think is the best interpretation of the character so far. We believe that ending gives us reason to believe this Spider-Man can be as good if not better.
And this video is for us to talk about that.
What are the future projects for Tom Holland's Spider-Man, and how will Peter's story arc continue? Spider-Man now has a brand new start, so every encounter we have seen with him is reset.
He will meet Doctor Strange again, build new relationships, and make new enemies.
The future of Spider-Man is expected to continue with a brand new trilogy that will portray Peter's college life.
We would like to mention that Peter will start from ground zero. His tech is back to collecting scrap and has no connections. This will make everything more challenging for him. We won't see his nanosuit helping him to take control of Octopus's tentacles or prevent him from dying.
In the end of the movie, when Peter is settling into his new apartment, inside on the top of the boxes, we see a GED test study menu.
The General Educational Development Test provides certification that test taker has United States or Canadian high school level academic skills.
Now that no one knows Peter Parker, he hasn't officially been a part of Midtown High, so he will use this certificate when applying to college.
In the comics, the animated series, and the video game, Peter attends the Empire State University, which is a fictional college.
MCU Earth became a fictional world when they introduced Wakanda, so we assume they can also create a fictional college.
Usually we can see Peter's high school relationship to continue during college, but in this case Peter will make a new impression to everyone he meets.
Ned and MJ were Peter's only friends, and now they will be leaving for MIT. In these next 3 movies, we don't expect to see him around Peter so much.
They might make an appearance, and we also heard some rumors about either one of the two to return as Hobgoblin, but there's no confirmation.
One of the true identities of Hobgoblin in the comics is Ned Leeds, which makes an easy fit to play the character. However, MCU doesn't always stay loyal to the comics and can make the Hobgoblin whoever they want. We are more excited to see the new people Peter will meet. There are a whole bunch of possibilities as we haven't seen some of Peter's closest friends. We don't expect to see another MJ as Mary Jane. Gwen Stacy could be used, but Peter already knows the existence of another Gwen on a multiverse, so we don't know how that would be convincing. The perfect love interest for Peter would be Felicia Hardy, aka the Black Cat.
There's a Black Cat reference in No Way Home. When the people who know Spider-Man is Peter Parker, one of the blurry characters arriving to Earth is her. This could be foreshadowing to her introduction in the next movies.
In the comics, Spider-Man and Black Cat have a relationship, not Peter and Felicia. Felicia actually thinks of Peter as kind of a nerd. This would suit our Peter, as he is in a state where he focuses more on Spider-Man than Peter.
He also doesn't want to hurt people around him. This is one of the main reasons why he didn't tell MJ about who he really is in the coffee house. However, Peter or Spider-Man wouldn't have a problem being with someone who can get by on their own.
There are different adaptations of the Black Cat. The most original for us is the one in the animated series. She is given the super soldier serum by Kingpin in an attempt to save her father, John Hardesky, who is the original cat burglar.
This would fit into the MCU as the story of the super soldier serum has already been explored. There are other versions of the cat where she's a burglar like his father, but that story reminds us too much about another cat hero or villain in another franchise.
Speaking about Kingpin, he too is now a part of the MCU, as we have seen on Hawkeye.
We didn't see a backstory of the character yet, but apparently he gained power during the blip and became a part of the New York Underground. Kingpin, also known as Wilson Fisk, is the most influential person in New York. He's a respected businessman as Wilson Fisk and the most feared man in New York as the Kingpin. He's at the beginning of his journey in the MCU as of 2024, but he will get more powerful in the near future.
He also happens to be one of Spider-Man's greatest challenges. He struggles to learn the identity of the Kingpin and has a hard time taking him down.
It takes 5 seasons for Spider-Man to take down Kingpin in the animated series and 8 years in the video game. Peter is 23 years old in that game, which makes Kingpin the main villain in the next trilogy for us. The trilogy can end with Spider-Man finishing Kingpin.
Matt Murdock made his first appearance in the MCU in No Way Home. His greatest rival is also Kingpin. This puts even more emphasis on the importance of the villain for the future of Spider-Man.
Another person Peter can meet during college is Harry Osborne.
This may be unlikely as Peter already knows the Osborne family and we have never heard of them so far in the MCU. It was also confirmed by Norman that Oscorp doesn't exist. That doesn't mean it won't exist in the future, but we aren't sure how they will use the story of Harry and another Green Goblin. It is possible but unlikely.
If Harry Osborne exists, there would be a strange dynamic between Peter and him. Peter would be on the lookout constantly at first, but when he completely trusts him, Harry becomes the Green Goblin.
Venom made it into the end credits scene of No Way Home.
If you are wondering how a person who doesn't know Peter Parker ended up in our universe, the symbiotes are interlinked through multiverses. So if there's a symbiote that knows Peter Parker is Spider-Man, all other symbiotes know Peter Parker is Spider-Man.
This scene was a goofy one where Eddie Brock spent the entire time he was in the multiverse in a bar asking questions to a bartender. However, when he left, a fraction of the symbiote managed to stay, which is more than enough to bring Venom into the MCU.
The fundamental idea of Venom is created from Spider-Man. We believe Venom cannot have a compelling story without him. When the symbiote hits Earth, the first thing it wants to find is a strong match. One of the strongest creatures on Earth is Peter Parker, so it chooses him. When Peter realizes Venom isn't the power, it is a weakness, he tosses it aside. So the symbiote isn't happy and feels betrayed. It starts resenting and then hating Spider-Man and Peter Parker, which makes it want to find a person who hates Spider-Man and Peter Parker as much as it. This is when he finds Eddie Brock.
MCU should be using this idea for Venom.
The Sinister Six would be a good set of enemies for Peter to face. Seeing Dr. Octopus, Lizard, Sandman, and Electro again might look a bit lazy after using the different versions from other universes.
We mentioned how Green Goblin could return, and that logic could be applied to all.
For example, Kurt Connors could easily be a college professor. Maybe they can just keep him a college professor and not a supervillain like they did in Raimi's trilogy.
We already have a few members introduced. Vulture and Scorpion are in the same prison together. Mysterio's remaining technology are stored and his illusion could be brought back. We already have a Shocker which tallies our total to 4. We mentioned Hobgoblin as well.
There are a few more potential members out there. Kraven is one of the members in the comics, but he will have a movie coming up in this Sony universe. We don't exactly know the policy between Marvel and Sony about using the same characters.
Martin Lee, aka Mr. Negative, that became popular in the video game, could be a part of the Sinister Six. We didn't meet the owner of Feast yet. Martin Lee could be the man behind the Foundation.
Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man already mentioned Rhino, so we aren't sure if they would use him. Carnage, Hydra Man, Morbius, and the Spot are some of the other villains that can appear. If you have an idea about a potential Spider-Man villain, leave it in the comments down below.
Finally, we would like to talk about Miles Morales. We already met Miles' uncle Aaron Davis, aka the Prowler. Originally, Miles is 8 years younger than Peter, which would make him 9 to 10 in 2024. He becomes Spider-Man at the age of 14 or 15.
This is the perfect opportunity to introduce him after the trilogy we talked about. Marvel can adjust Miles' age to bring him into the MCU maybe by the end of the second movie or in the final movie. As we mentioned, we aren't sure how Sony feels about Miles in the MCU, but Disney can pull off a deal.
This is all we wanted to talk about the college trilogy. Peter now has all the conditions to be the best version of Spider-Man, and we cannot be more excited about the character's future.
We expect to hear some official news regarding the next trilogy in the next Disney-related event. Also, there are some news about finishing the Amazing Spider-Man trilogy. There are very strong rumors about adding Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man into the Sony universe, which wouldn't contradict anything as far as we are concerned.
We might end up having two great Spider-Mans on the big screen at the same time, with the potential of the two meeting in the future using multiverses.
Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. For now,
Bieber's out.